Okay, we'll now call this regular workshop meeting to order. All right, we have a proposed agenda for tonight's meeting, and I would entertain a motion to adopt this agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have minutes, and we have 3 consent items. So minutes are from the April 22nd, 2025 regular meeting.
Move approval of the minutes as presented
And the consent items.
and consent items.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. So our first item this evening will be our budget discussion, item number 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologize, I'm working on it slowly. It's a process. There you go.
You're making
Look at
good
that.
progress.
Got it within 7 slides.
They don't teach them that in South Carolina.
We had to turn the screen on ourselves too, that's ridiculous. So we are in our, what we would say, our next to last planned budget workshop for the council. We have a couple items to talk to you about this evening, but we want to go back over some of these facts. Some of our citizens may just watch this for the first time. We are looking to review the FY26 budget, which is the July 1, 2025 to June 30, 2026. For the proposed budget, we do not have a tax rate change. We do have increases to the water and sewer rates, and we have an increase to the recycling and residential sanitation rate. We're going to review the water and sewer rate model here in a minute with Sabrina, but these are the basic foundations of the FY26 budget. We are scheduled, if nothing changes, to have this presented at the next council meeting on May 20th to consider adoption of the FY26 proposed budget. If we have some changes before then, we'll make those changes. If council chooses at the May 20th meeting to postpone the consideration, then we'll move that to the next meeting in June. Total expenditures by fund, we've seen this spreadsheet before. You see the comparisons for FY25 and 26. There's really not a lot of difference in the 25 and 26 numbers because we're looking at some of the projects and moving project funds from one year to the next. So that $142 million that you see is broken down. The majority of that's broken down to the general fund, water and sewer fund, solid waste fund, stormwater, and then capital projects. $142 million. If you recall, about $60 million of those dollars are the personnel cost for the year, and that would be all city. You'll see the comparisons between 2 of the main revenue sources on the general fund side. That's the property tax. We are estimating a slight increase in the property tax. However, we're looking at a reduced number in the sales tax for next year. And so then you'll see the appropriated fund balance for next year. Between the two, it's a reduced amount, but $3 million plus or minus to balance out the budget for FY26 on the general fund side. General fund appropriation comes from our reserve. That's why we have to have the reserve, and we've had that conversation on multiple occasions about the value of a good, healthy fund balance so that when we need to balance out a shortfall in revenues for the expenses, we have that available for us.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
What's driving the anticipated reduction in sales tax?
We're seeing that across statewide. One of the things that Senator Lazar has told us is the state has seen a reduction in sales tax. We're still on that decline from post-COVID, and now we're seeing a leveling out. So one of the things that the county has talked to us about is they're seeing their number at roughly 2.2% increase for the year is what they're proposing on their budget. We're a lot more conservative in our revenues, so we're going back to previous year's numbers. And the reasoning there is if we see the 21 million, then there's no fund balance appropriation effectively, but we want to make sure that we're giving you a realistic number on sales tax. And I don't think that we're seeing any changes in the base of our businesses that are operating. A lot of people like to have conversation about restaurants that may close and then new restaurants opening up. If you think about the property tax, you see some of those increases in the new buildings. I give an example that when Wawa opens up, their ad valorem tax will go, that piece of property will go from $700 up to about $20,000. That's one example. So if you get 4 Wawas, then you get $80,000 added to your revenue stream for the year. And so every little property increase makes an impact. Same thing for the Amazon facility. You'll see an impact of that once they're up and once they have that building completed. But the sales tax, I think you're seeing an ebb and flow. It impacts a lot of things at the state level, and it's going to impact us locally. Hopefully we're being overly conservative, but we typically don't apologize for being overly conservative. We think that's a good fundamental way to operate revenues here for the city. If you want to spend more, I encourage you to spend more. That would help us out immensely. Questions on any of those numbers? Okay, here you go. Sabrina's going to go over the water and sewer rate model as the question that came up before.
That was quick. I'm going to slide over a little bit because my eyesight, if I put on my glasses, then I can't see my notes. So it's fun times. Like Mr. Ray said, just a brief review of the budget. We wanted to do the same thing with the water sewer rate model. First try-on was here back in January and did pretty much the same presentation, but we wanted to go back, look at all of our numbers, make sure we were still on track with that, and then just do a quick review. So since the presentation by first try-on, the only thing that really changed in the budget or CIP for water sewer was we moved one project out 1 year. Otherwise, nothing else changed, which was great. So the presentation really is the exact same presentation that was given back in January, but I'm just going to go through it real quick once again. We make some assumptions when we do the rate model, quite a few. The service revenues, water user, sewer user revenues are based obviously on actual usage and meter count, but non-rate based revenues, we grow at 1% annually. Again, we are conservative. Right now, things like investment earnings are obviously greater than 1%, but things are very dynamic right now, changing every day, so we want to continue to remain conservative so that we're not, again, having to apologize later because we were under budget on our revenues. Expense escalation, again, things are variable with that right now, especially when it comes to construction projects, but we do escalate expenses throughout the model 1.5 to 5% per year based on the category. So salaries, we do 5%. Things that typically have a 3% increase every year built in, like contracted professionals, CIP projects we escalate. Those things are around 3%, and then a lot of our operating expenses are 1.5%, just depending on the category. And then we use the FY26 proposed CIP, which has all of our projects in it through 2035. And that's the document that I went through again and just made sure we had all of the projects in there and they were in the right years. There are 2 different model panel scenarios. This year it is a different model, so it does look a little bit differently, but we always show you what the planned water and sewer rate increases look like with 2.25%, which is just what we had previously agreed was best practice. And then we have what we always refer to as the just-in-time scenario. So we built this model similar to that. And so with the 2.25, that's the plan, 2.25% every year. The rate does not change based on capital needs, meaning we're overriding the model and we're saying this is what we're going to do to meet our financial targets. And then the just-in-time rate increases vary annually based on the numbers that are in there, the capital projects. And that model is set just to meet the financial targets in every year. So you're meeting the minimum basic debt service coverage, days of cash on hand, those basic targets that you've set. And it calculates the rate to let you know what rate increases you will need through 2034 based on those financial targets. So it's a little bit small, but you'll see that for FY29, you will have that larger rate increase, which is what we try to avoid by doing the 2.25. So we're coming in at 7.41%, and then the following year, 4.5. Then you may, only need a tiny rate increase in 2031, but then you're back up again. So that, inconsistency. And then even in 2033, we have the 11% is what we're trying to avoid with the stable, small increases year to year. With the annual rate increases, the flat 2.25, we're meeting the financial targets that we have included every year. We actually have our minimum debt service coverage at 2.09, which is 2 times our debt service requirements. And we have a minimum days cash on hand at 484 days. And our average customer bill when we get to the end is $41.14 and $70.78 for sewer. And I can flip back and forth if it's easier when we get to that part, but you'll see that when we do the just-in-time rate increases, when you get to the end, those rates are higher, which is what we always talk about, why it's important to do those small increases. And then it's a busy graphic, but this is a panel from the model that just shows, if you see the red line, that's where our financial targets are. Those are the minimum where we want to be. And you can see that, especially on the debt service coverage, we're above that. And I think we don't talk too much about the water sewer fund when it comes to things like unplanned expenses. But this is where you can sort of think about the fund balance and the minimum days cash on hand, which is what this model alludes to. Whereas when you have the just-in-time rate increases, you're at that minimum. So this allows for an unplanned emergency. You could have water and sewer expenses with a hurricane or a capital project. A large capital project could appear, hopefully not, but it could, that you haven't planned for. And so when you have these annual rate increases and your targets are a little bit higher than minimum, it allows some flexibility with that, which is conservative. We like to be. So with the just-in-time rate increases, still we're meeting those financial targets that are required every year, but our minimum debt service coverage drops down to 1.77. And then our minimum days cash on hand is just 365, which is the minimum that we've set as the financial target. And then our average customer bill in 2034 ends at $42.45 and $74.70. So it's a little bit higher. And then again, just a snapshot from the model that shows that you're just at those financial targets with the just-in-time increases. And that was very short, but hopefully good. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you all have. As of now, we do have the 2.25 planned in the budget for FY26.
Yeah, to reiterate on that, on the model just protects us from those spikes if we utilize it effectively. And when we look at it, Sabrina's numbers go from $41.70, that's in 11 years. So you have those numbers on the back end, that being $111. And right now, we're coming in at about $88. So from 88 to 111, and then we, on the just-in-time model, we'd go up to about 116, 117. So you see that increase over, so we keep that spike of 11.11%, and that's our goal. We never want to have that spike, and so we've talked about that. Mr. Warden alluded to it on the potential sanitation fund. Maybe that's something that we look at as we're moving forward. Once we figure out what that point is at, how do we maintain those funds? Once again, this model gives us the ability to not only project, but to protect our ratepayers. And I think that's something that's a big point for us, because we can project out what it's going to look like in 11 years. So if we go out to somebody, barring any spikes, this is how the market should allow us to say this is what that fund's going to be. If we do the same with sanitation and we look at our stormwater, that's a full utility bill for the customer, and we can project that out. And that's something we want to put those items together, because when we start talking about a citizen's ad valorem property tax and their utility bill, these are things that come from the city for the services that we provide. So we get a full composite look, a dashboard, as we would say, for what that customer impact is going to be over the next decade. And I think that's good forecasting for the council to pay attention to as we move these numbers along and still provide those services.
And I do like to end, I forgot to say this, but we do look at the rate model every year we'll update our when we get our financial statements this year, we'll update it with that information. So we'll revisit that every year, and, hopefully we'll have good news for future years, but that's where we are right now. But we do look at it at least once every year, sometimes twice.
And one of Sabrina's important points, I think, about the new model is the fact that we do upload the audited budget from the previous year. So it's like a zeroing, when it comes to where you're starting. And then, you of course add your adjustments to budget for the current year and run it again, kind of thing.
What I like about the smaller increase is it makes budgeting by our citizens and our businesses a whole lot easier too. I think that's important. And I think it also conveys a sense that we know what we're about, rather than all of a sudden, no, next year we need a 7.41, or an 11 point something. I think it conveys that we are on top of things rather than just reacting. Even though we wouldn't be just reacting, but we are. And just in time is a reaction type of model.
It's more manageable, I think, for both.
Yes.
For our citizens and businesses, but also for the city, for our resources and all the things we know we have coming CIP-wise and everything else, so.
Agree.
It's a valuable add by the council. When the council decided that we're going to move forward with the water and sewer rate model, and we're going to use that as a planning tool, it makes the forecasting and the dissemination of planning information to citizens so much more effective and efficient. It's a great add.
Is this model a whole lot easier to use than the old
Yes.
one? I remember that was a selling point.
It is.
Okay.
It's a lot easier. The fact that it uses the actual audited financial statements instead of line by line, because in the old model, I keyed in a lot manually, line by line by line, and we don't have to do that now. So it's a lot
Easier.
when I had to come back and just look at the CIP and make sure all the projects were in, and I didn't have to go back and key in every expense and revenue. So
Made yours and Wally's job a whole lot more efficient, had it?
made my job a lot easier.
Mayor, we haven't received any comments via email or to the clerk's office for FY26 budget. If we get anything, as I said, we'll continue to send those out to council over the next 2 weeks. One thing that I will add, if you saw the email, we sent out the quarterly reports. We do want to go over those at the next meeting, and so we'll have that scheduled on the May 20th meeting. Yes, ma'am. So we'll have it on that meeting, but that'll be separate from the budget consideration. So if you have any other questions, or if you receive questions that we can get out as a response, please send those in this week and next week so we can get you those responses. Thank you, ma'am.
Second, tax point is worth, what, 420,000?
About 420, yes, sir.
So that makes the council special fund, what, 1.6 million for this fiscal year?
Plus or minus, yes, sir.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Did that without the calculator. And I noticed Mr. Warden didn't nod in advance. He was waiting for some affirmation on that one. So, Mayor, this leads right into the next one. So this whole plan, this budget for the last 2 years, we've told council that the reason that we're moving forward on multiple fronts is because we have big projects that we want to continue to do. Council's remained very consistent and supported the project, which we have up on the screen as the Sports and Events Complex. And so the exciting part for us today is for Anthony to give the council an update on this project and for us to be able to plan for next year for how we make this project come to fruition once you see the impressive presentation that Anthony has.
We'll see about that.
We haven't seen it yet, but it sounds good.
Please excuse me tonight. I'm a little warm in this room, but it has nothing to do with this content because this is hopefully going to be very impressive when you see it. Last time we were together was February, and we gave you some really great concepts at the time. We looked at the floor plan, we looked at the master plan, etc. But ever since then, we've still been doing a lot of work. Since February, we completed the site survey. We also looked at the underground subsurface area out there and found out that in fact it is Jacksonville mud. right, Mr. Warden, and the technical term for Jacksonville soil, excuse me. We also completed a traffic impact analysis, which gives us an idea of what the traffic management is going to be like. And then the last three we're going to talk about in detail, so I'm not going to, cover a whole lot here. First thing we did is last December, we put out an RFP for a management company. Remember, we told you about that in February. We ended up with 6 total proposals, which in fact was a lot. We didn't expect to get that many, and in fact, that's the most that the consultant that's been helping us has ever seen to be received by a project like this. We had a panel of 13 reviewers, city staff, as well as members of the consultant team that helped us review it. We conducted 4 interviews, and we selected VenueWorks, an excellent company. Okay? So you look at the experience, that VenueWorks has. They manage facilities all over the United States. Here's just a few of them that show what they're capable of doing: ice rinks, convention centers, amphitheaters, etc. It runs the full gamut. And they were really the top vote getter from all of the reviewers, but also I think they had the character that aligned the most with the city of Jacksonville, in fact. So these are just wonderful people to work with. The guy that we're coordinating with right now, his name is Dave Stowe, and you can see part of his, resume on the screen there. Super Bowls, Olympics, working with all of these different organizations. You can tell that he's got a lot of experience in this area. Dave has been excellent to work with, and like I mentioned to you before, his character aligns very closely with what I think we're looking for in a partner. We've also been working on the plan unit development. So that's a process that's going to come before council not too long from now. It's something that's pretty unique in the fact that we haven't seen very many come through this process. I think the last one was the development over in Georgetown. But the great thing about the plan unit development is that it allows us to really kind of customize the project to meet our needs. And because we're one of the first to go through this, we're helping to set the bar at this point, if you will, to establish what we think the minimum expectation is for a good plan unit development. So some of the components here, and I don't want to give it away too much because you are going to see this in the future. We've got a master plan that goes along with the document. It's basically a bubble diagram, if you will, that shows the different types of development we expect to happen on the site. It's very generic, but at the same time, it's specific enough to kind of help us to guide what we think we want to build. So that's the line that we're trying to walk here: be flexible enough, but then also be specific enough to get what we want out of the end product. Okay? The PUD is also going to include design guidelines, right? This is another way for us to help make sure that we're going to get the product that we're looking for. Guidelines you can see here for the mixed use, non-residential, but it also has guidelines for residential and commercial and all the other different components that we expect to be built out there. One thing that you haven't seen yet, and of course we can dive into this in more detail at a later date, we've got an entertainment and recreation section that basically just describes the whole entertainment, recreation aspect of the project. But on the screen here is our passive recreation plan. So the lines that you see are either on or off-road trails, for walking, jogging, bicycling, you know, a whole variety of different things. There's areas for disc golf potentially. There's areas for us to continue our work with the Frogman. Yes, thank you. Yep. So, you know, again, this is an excellent plan. It's something that we want to carry forward with the plan unit development, but please know also that this plan has been very closely coordinated with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that council adopted last year.
Got a dog park on there.
Dog park, I'm
Yeah,
seeing it.
Yeah.
I have a lot of happy people.
Yeah,
We get a lot of feedback about dog
We do,
parks,
so do we.
so.
And Michael pushed for a golf course, so you see a disc golf course, because he didn't clarify what he wanted. And so that's on there. We've checked the box.
He actually asked the county for a golf course, but they just told him no.
But you see the uniqueness in that plan, trying to satisfy a lot of the needs of what we saw in the survey in one master development, which makes the PUD challenging, but it makes it very special for an end product.
One thing that I hope that you realize by the time that we get to the very end here is that there are hundreds of hours of work by lots of people to try to make this the best possible product that we can make it. Transportation, last but not least, we're not going to get into the details here tonight. You'll hear more about it in the plan unit development hearing that we will have. But the good news is that it doesn't appear that we're going to have to make any adjustments to the DOT infrastructure out at Gum Branch and Western. You know, as you recall, that roadway was just recently widened. And the widening out there came at a great time for us because we're going to be able to take advantage of it with this project, not having to make those improvements ourselves. So here's the schedule. Plan unit development. We're going to work on the document tomorrow and get it all finished up so that we can have a public meeting on the 22nd. We'll go before the planning board if all goes well on June 9th, and then we'll be talking to the city council on July 22nd. So it is moving forward. We are a little bit behind the curve on the timeline, mainly because we needed some survey data that we didn't have to get it started, but it's still, you know, well within the tolerances of the overall project. So we showed this to you last time as well. This is the current master plan. It hasn't changed substantially. I'll show you a couple of areas where it's a little bit different in the future. But overall, you know, this still remains very valid. And we're calibrating on the athletic fields. We have a consultant that's called Fit Fields, and that's all they do for a living, is they design athletic fields. And they're helping us to make sure that we get the maximum utility out of these, but also that we minimize our maintenance and resolve a lot of the operational concerns that come up when you have multiple different events going on at the same time in the same place.
So we'll price out like turf too.
I'm sorry?
We'll price out turf.
We'll have several options for you to consider. There will be turf on, you know, in that plan, because really that's just the best way to make sure that we're able to use it as much as possible. You know, the grass is just unreliable, mainly because of weather. It's also difficult to maintain. So, you know, it's kind of a balancing act, cost versus.
Pay for it up front, then one.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We'll have to figure all that out, but, you know, what we want to make sure is that we got a sound concept here, and then we can help develop multiple pricing options and go from there.
I can tell you the turfs are hotter fields too. The temperature around them is quite a bit warmer than around a grass field.
You act like you have experience. The other challenge with turf fields is that you have to treat stormwater. Okay.
Impervious.
So on a typical grass field, you don't have to treat the impervious surface. So, you know, these are all things that play out in not only the capital cost up front, but also the long-term maintenance.
We go with a mixture, do part turf, part grass.
And that's the beauty of these consultants. Like when Dave comes in and Dave starts talking about managing these facilities, and he says, in these other places where we have facilities, how do we maximize their utility? How do we get that space? You know, a lot of the times we focused on the multi-use complex as being the indoor facility, but this right here, just seeing this picture tells you not only soccer and flag football and field hockey and lacrosse, but there's so much more activity that can happen here in this center that creates utility that we just haven't seen before.
If it's designed properly.
And that's part of bringing these partners in, is not only do we have Dave's team with VenueWorks, but we also have our current partners we've been working with. So they bring in that experience for how we're going to maximize these spaces. And that's just one section of this planned unit development. And so to have that ability to see this work now, and even this diagram, it's incredible.
And one thing to keep in mind too is that this piece of it may roll out in phases. It all depends on what the costing is going to be and what the council chooses is the best way forward. Where you see number 1 and number 4 there, of course, you know, things like the fields and the parking, I mean, those are must-haves. Those aren't, you know, wants, if you will. But number 1 there is showing more of a field house type of a facility, and 4 is kind of like an outdoor recreation area to support the whole, to support this whole rectangular field campus. You know, we'll have to pick and choose what we move forward kind of in that arched area as we do the final planning and move towards bid. But again, this is just another area where we put in a lot of effort to make sure that we can get maximum utility and value out of it. So we're going to look at the floor plan, and overall the building configuration has not changed substantially, okay? But we have calibrated on a lot of the areas internal to it. Before we get to the actual like zoom in pieces where I'm going to show you where some of those changes have been made, just want to give you some orientation points so that you'll understand where we are as we go through the rest of the slides. So the northern side of the building is what I'll call the sports area. Okay, that's where the courts are, the large open space, all of that. Down here is where the conference area is, and of course, goes without saying, that's what it is. It's the conference area. We have a courtyard in between the two that's going to be like a controlled access area where patrons of the site will be able to go in there and, you know, either hang out or eat their lunch, dinner, whatever they're there for. Have an outdoor space that's kind of in that controlled environment. And then we'll have a main entrance as well as the conference entrance. Now, those aren't mutually exclusive. They'll be able to be used for both purposes, but we're just labeling them two different things to give you context there. So looking at the sports area, if you will, we heard loud and clear, of course. I think, Mr. Warden, you brought this up last time, and then we also heard it from lots of others who were on the project team. Restrooms are mission critical. So we went through and calibrated not only on the number of restrooms, but also on the location. And so we haven't expanded the footprint here, or the square footage of the building, but what we have done is just repurpose some of that space to include additional capacity for restrooms. We also revised the loading dock area, so you can see that the loading dock is coming in from the side as opposed to the rear. You know, that's feedback that we've gotten from a whole variety of stakeholders on the project, and it just makes sense. We also worked on the storage. Storage is a huge need for the facility, and you know what we've learned in a lot of the other facilities that we've been to is that there's no such thing as too much storage, but there's only so much money in the budget to pay for storage. So, you know, we want to right size it. We spend a lot of time looking at what we're going to need to store, where, when, and how to get it out on the floor. So, you know, we've really kind of honed in on what that plan is. And last but not least, we also have been working on the locker rooms and the other rooms that support the athletic events. Dave from Venue Works has really helped us, kind of figure out a lot of the details there. But, again, this concept overall is the same, right? But we've just really calibrated on some of the details. So shifting to the south, you can see where the courtyard is there, the main entrance, and then the conference entrance. By and large, this remains the same. Again, we just worked on some of the details. First being restrooms, having enough restrooms, putting them in the right places for not only the patrons of the facility, but you can see on the bottom left-hand side there, we also have restrooms for the staff who are going to be working on the backside, back end of the operation. Again, we revised the loading location to make it more efficient and effective for supporting the building. We've got common themes here, right? We looked at storage, again, on this side. In this case, we were actually able to shrink it a little bit, but that allowed us to increase the kitchen. Initially, we were talking about just having a catering kitchen. The challenge with that is, in working with Venue Works, food and beverage is the key area that we're going to be able to focus on for cost recovery. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're adequately prepared to provide those services. So those are the major changes to the inside of the
So we're going to
building.
a full commercial kitchen?
It's not a very large one,
Yeah.
756 square feet, but they did give us the specifications, them being Venue Works, gave us specifications of what they've used successfully in other places. And that's what we base it off of.
When Terrell and I and Mr. Jackson were at City Vision last week, we were looking at the conference layout, and we were looking at how that facility in Greenville was similar to the concept that we've done here. Right now, I find myself counting tables again, because we were sitting in there counting tables in that facility to see how that compares with what we're talking about, because that's been part of our strategy is what size meetings can we bring to the community that we're not already bringing? So we've talked about that size of venue. We've talked about managers conference or finance directors conference. And so a lot of those intricacies of those facilities, we also saw in Cary at the North Carolina Defense Summit, looking at those spaces, how we can maximize it. So it's so good to see the program that we've laid out can work for those type of events here in Jacksonville. The next thing, once it's built, is we just got to figure out how to get people here.
You look at the layout there, there's a whole mess of tables in there, right? It's going to seat, I think, up to 600 people, the way that it currently sits, but then it's going to be subdividable, and we'll be able to flex a lot of that space around for different purposes. So moving to the outside, again, we have the same reference points, the courtyard, the main entrance, conference entrance, right? But this shows you a little bit about the landscaping context outside of the building, okay? Now, there are other areas that we'll focus on at a later date, but these are the ones that I believe are most functional for the facility itself. You can see the courtyard there, top left. It has both hardscape and landscape, areas to sit and eat and just relax, or whatever you want to do in between events. We also plan to have some stormwater treatment facilities in there. These aren't wet ponds, that are going to have mosquitoes and things involved with them. These are going to be what we call dry basins that fill up with water. They give the area a little bit of topography, but then they drain down and they dry out. And they're essentially just grassed. But it gives some interest to the area, if nothing else. And then you move to the other side where the main entrance is. You can see that we've got a nice tree line corridor there to kind of frame that main entrance, focus people on the front door. We also have a two aisle circulation area for folks to be able to pick up and drop off their loved ones. where we have 4 and 5 there, that's intended to be kind of a multi-purpose lawn, if you will. You can use it for a lot of different things. Recreation will probably use it for, whatever, their movie night or, the beginning or ending point of a race event, who knows? But it's a great flexible outside facility that's going to be able to support the building, but also the site itself. One of the things that I didn't mention with the passive recreation plan, the trails, is that we're designing them so that we could host cross-country events. So for like high school races and things of that nature. It also is part of the Frogman event. So if you look at the east-west sidewalk there that runs, say, between 14 and 12, the intent would be to have gathering areas in the field and then have direct access through that sidewalk out to our off-road paths.
It's very aesthetically pleasing, the use of some of the angles and curves that are in this layout. I know this is preliminary and not all completely finalized, but just the use of angles on the sidewalks, natural pathways people would take versus trying to stick to a grid pattern or something like that. It's very pleasing.
That's what
to the eye.
happens when you get landscape architects
Yeah,
involved.
It's really
They put
attractive.
lots of curves in things. They threw roundabouts
angles
at
and
us at
tents and
every single
triangles.
corner, and
They make it more expensive for maintaining, but it looks prettier.
we're trying to find that balance. Right. But you could definitely tell that they had some tendencies that we needed to work against, but at the same time, their creativity is what's going to give this place an experience that'll bring people
Right.
back.
So it makes it people
So-
friendly.
Right.
As we make the final decision on, what can we afford versus what we cannot, we have to keep that concept in mind that if it's going to be successful, it has to be memorable, right? And people have to have a good experience while they're here. Excuse me. So right next to that open field area, you see there's kind of an oval. It's an oval intersection. So again, I told you they gave us multiple locations for roundabouts. We kind of nixed all those, but we ended up with an oval. The great thing about the oval is that it works well with kind of oblong, multiple intersection configurations. It's a great traffic calming device. It really helps with pedestrian safety. But then also from a landscape architect standpoint, one of the reasons that they love them is it gives you a real nice focal point in the middle of the roadway. And so where number 1 and number 2 are there, we've got some really artistic features there. Number 2 is a flag garden that's going to be very well landscaped. And so, it's really a statement piece, if you will. It's likely that there's going to be, you see that curved piece right there where it says number 2, it's likely that that'll be a sign of some sort. But
Fountain would always be
Again.
nice.
yeah, I hear you. Yeah, fountains would be nice, but of course, we all know how we feel about fountains.
Nice sculpture.
Yeah.
Talk about maintenance.
A sculpture in a fountain.
There you go.
Sculpture looking at a fountain.
Yeah.
Sculpture inside of it.
Or a sculpture playing in the fountain.
Yeah, I hear you.
We got a guy.
We got a guy.
Yeah, we've got a landscape architect team. So you put all of this together, right? What we've done to the site with the master plan, what we've done with the building, what we've done with the landscaping, and then you end up with something that looks like this.
Good. I thought you were going to throw up a price tag there and just kill the whole mood.
We wouldn't do it with that. This is the thing.
We're showing you the pretty pictures.
One city center. How about that?
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, will there be windows on the front? I can't tell on the right side, like where are you going to look at the basketball courts? Will there be windows or just a?
There's windows in multiple locations
On the
in this
front.
facility. So let's just start left to right, if we could. So you see on the first floor there's lots of windows looking into the conference center. on what would be the second floor. It's not really a floor that you occupy, but it's an open space that looks down into the conference area. You've got translucent panels. They're not clear, so to speak, but it allows light to go through. That's the southern-facing portion of the building. So you don't want that beating down summer sun coming into the building, but you do want that diffused light. Then you move towards the center where the main entrance is. That's completely surrounded in glass. Not only does it allow light in, but it also kind of reflects out in the evening, gives it more of a glowing type of feel. And then glass along the front, on the right-hand side, that first story. And then what you get in the big box area of the actual sports complex there where the sign is, the glass kind of goes away because you don't have that opportunity with what's on the back side of that wall. But you can see the gabled end of that building also has glass, as well as the front side of that. And it's actually going to be translucent because that's the north side of the building. You get indirected sunlight. So, it's just a great opportunity not only to drive down some of the energy costs, but also just to get some really great sunlight in there, and then also have that warm glow in the evening when kids are in there playing basketball and making lots of noise. So, yeah, so this is just one of the shots, again, looking at the main entrance. Now you flip it to the other side, again, same building. You can see on the right-hand side where it says One City Center, the sports complex. This is One City Center, the conference area. Now, of course, you can see there that we got trees in front of the sign. There's still calibration needed on that for it to really kind of get to where we want it. But on the second story, you can see those translucent panels that I'm talking about. This would be one of the main entrances for the conference, center. So the brick area that you kind of see there on the first story on the right, there's an entryway there that'll take you into the reception area of the conference room, or the conference center.
Second story is non-functional.
Yes, sir. Really, the only purpose of the second story is to get the sloped roof on it. We did not to get the sloped roof. Yeah, that was a huge priority, is to get the sloped roof for many reasons. But one of the side effects of that, of course, is that we have that kind of vertical height to be able to get the light in and to be able to use it. So this is it from a perspective shot.
Where's Lauradale at?
It's way off in the distance on the right-hand side.
Way off in the distance, okay.
You can't throw a stone and hit it from here, that's for sure. But it just gives you an idea of what the site might look like once it's all said and done.
Pretty.
Very.
Again, and as I mentioned before, I think you can see the number of hours that have been put into this by a variety of different people. Many of the folks in the room here have participated. The consultant team that's helped us put the whole concept together, all the research that we did and traveling around to seeing other facilities, it's really paying off. So the next steps here, we want to go to, if we're okay with what we've seen, we're going to move forward to cost estimate and schematic design, okay? The plan unit development is moving forward in July. The final design contract, as you recall, when we brought McAdams on board, we did so just for phase 1 of their contract. Now that we're through schematic design, we will have to look at phase 2 of their contract to get us to the finish line and ready to bid. Once the plan unit development is done, we'll develop RFPs to get the private partners on board to help us with the residential and the multi-use development and all the other pieces. And then we'll also come back to talk about the management contract. I failed to mention before that we do have Venue Works under contract for a very short term. It's 6 months right now. And the reason is we need them to help support the design process. But the management contract is largely performance-based. That's one of the reasons that we liked it. They perform, they make more money, we have more events, so far and so forth.
They do better when we do better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the way to look at it. However, it's difficult to set the terms of that contract until we know exactly what the building's going to look like and when it's going to be open. So we will come back to you in August and talk more about that. And then final design, we're hoping to complete in October, November timeframe. So by the end of the year.
Quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Looking down the road, I'm trying to imagine on the property and how it would be visible from what Gum Branch Road.
The property itself?
The building.
You won't see them.
Yeah, the building is going to be set back far enough that I don't think you're going to be able to see it. Yeah, so.
Big fancy sign out on Gum Branch somewhere.
Well, I think what we've heard from others is that these are destinations, right? So I'm not sure that we're going to have a lot of signage other than, maybe some wayfindings, things of that nature. This whole development is going to be a destination of its own.
Well, if we have a big event, we certainly would like, especially if it's one that we hope the community will come out and support. It'd be nice to have a big fancy sign somewhere near there to advertise.
Gateway North.
We can talk more about that. Right now, we're just focusing on getting the thing moved forward towards the design and hopefully construction. But wayfinding and other signage is part of our contract with McAdams, so we will get to those pieces once we're a little bit further down the road. So.
Looks good.
Mayor, if you think about this concept, when we looked at the fields, which you can see off in the distance, and then the One City Center, this is only a small portion of the overall complex. So when you start doing the housing that Anthony's talking about, then you have the hotel that's down the street, and you have the other businesses that are located in this area. You're still looking at $1 billion development. So when we start talking about funding of a complex, you're using the revenues generated. The concept still goes back to a method similar to a tax incentive financing plan, but you're using the revenues that you've gained to fund a project or to supplement something else. And so you think about it, you're not just creating it for Jacksonville, but for Onslow County, they'll gain the same level of benefit. So when we talk about partnerships, the residential partners are going to be huge. The commercial partners are going to be great. Everybody that comes into this uptown Jacksonville area is going to have the ability to have a direct impact on the overall, not just what the city's doing, but what all our partners can do to maximize their utility as well. So conceptually, once we get to some of those build-out opportunities, it's going to be very exciting at every stage.
Want to look at the pictures again?
Just keep it on that one in the
That's just
background.
beautiful. Keep it right.
That's all we have on that one, Mayor.
Just missing a sculpture playing with a fountain.
We're going to put a picture of you up there.
At this point, calling all sponsors. If you have somebody that wants to start sponsoring the program and get naming rights with a sculpture, just have them start submitting checks to the finance department. We'd like them in large increments, and that'll help us out.
Get your statue put in there.
The Mr. Warden statue will be based on contribution.
I'll be able to probably afford maybe get naming rights on a urinal or something.
We have a plan for those.
Okay.
So,
Put a picture of you.
I may just be able to afford just a flush
Just the
valve.
handle?
the handle.
Yeah, just a handle.
That'll put a water treatment center.
Well, aim high. Thank you, Mayor.
You got some One City too?
I do have some One City if you're good to go there.
Yes, sir.
What a great way to finish, Mayor. We have a few items that I want to share with council. This is from the Jamboree this weekend. Hope you guys had the opportunity to be here. We had the BMX Club host out this for the first time. This area was incredible to see people congregate around. I believe they did 3 shows at 3 different times. So people came up to watch people do what most of us were doing in the 1980s by jumping these bikes. Wally has his bike with us today out in the parking lot. If you'd like to see him do this just after the meeting, we can make it happen. The rest of us can't make this happen. But what a great turnout and another awesome vendor to bring into the mix that people were very excited. In this picture as well, you can see one of the first shots of our new stage where we had multiple concerts performing. Then you see the close-up of the stage. Great advertising. What an impressive look. This is a partnership with the TDA to make this happen. This band is actually a return band from last year. They were in our Battle of the Bands competition. After they performed on Saturday, they headed to Kinston to perform at the Kinston Barbecue Fest. And so an awesome opportunity for people to be able to really enjoy the overall atmosphere of the Jamboree. I will add, James Jordan hosted a basketball tournament during the Jamboree at 4 different sites, had over 50 teams, boys and girls competing. So you had that going on, not only in the Commons with the music, over 20 food vendors, multiple other vendors in the area, rides, parking all over the place throughout the whole area, utilizing the whole neighborhood. The Jamboree is a marquee event for us. Susan and her crew were excellent in managing the day and making sure that things flowed for us. And once again, successful event. You look forward to what's going to happen next year. And then again to say thanks to the TDA for those of you that have worked with the TDA to help us get this stage. Stage by far is a value add for us, and we're going to use it time and time again. We did have Arbor Day that we celebrated at Thompson Early Childhood Development. Smokey the Bear there to really enjoy. Jason had a reading. Mr. Sosa had the proclamation that he read. These kids were so excited on the inside. Then they went outside with their shovels. I think we had a total of 6 trees that were planted that day there, yes, sir. Plus or minus. Look at that. So great for Michael and his crew to get out and about and help these kids not only be a part of the process, but to teach them the value of why we are a tree city for 40 plus years, why we see the value, and for Thompson Early Childhood Center to be a part of this year's event. You see multiple community partners showing up from the school board to the teachers to the chamber to our teams. Only the people in the very first row did any digging that day to help plant. And they had a great time with it. Seeing those kids cycle in and out shoveling dirt was a value add for sure. So a great location for this event. This next one, super fun. There's multiple layers here, but this student-to-student Veteran Services of Carolina partnership, this is part of our Harmony grants. So go to our youth council. If you remember, the youth council has Harmony grants that they give out every year. This group is part of, I'm going to miss it, Northside High School. So Northside, the student group, funded a project at Northside. This is the second level of the funding. So the funding goes to the student group, and theoretically, we're out of it at that point. The Jacksonville Youth Council has done a great job of selecting these partners. This is the next level. This is how those dollars are put into action. Not just teaching other youth how to be effective citizens, but now letting them put their project into action. So what they did is they worked to create these bags. These are for packages for veterans, for homeless individuals. They're packed full. They're survival bags, so they're packed full of hygiene items, blankets, hats, socks, water, and snacks. And then they give those out to Veteran Services so that they can get the care packages out to our homeless individuals. So multiple levels. level. It starts with the Jacksonville Youth Council. The City Council allocates those funds every year. Jacksonville Youth Council carries it out and makes these projects happen. But this is that multiplier. You know, we talk about force multiplier all the time and the things that we do in a military host community. This is the multiplier for our program. So great job to Tracy's team and to Pamela Trafton to work with the Youth Council and then get us the follow-up that we bring back to council to say, thank you for your efforts here. We also had the Fabric of the Community and our Lightkeeper Awards. This is put on from the United Way of Onslow. We have a couple of awards that's come out. Since 2017, 49 individuals have been awarded with the Fabric of the Community Awards. A couple of individuals that you're going to see here. We had the Youth Awards right here with Leah O'Brien. That's the Children Healthy Eating on Weekends. And then you'll see so Maya Chadwick, the Sturgeon City Environmental Center. These are the awards that they received. And then we also have from the Onslow Civic Affairs Committee the Lifetime of Community Dedication Awards. And so the 2025 awards are Annie and Adam Maddox, Ike Johnson, John and Susan Stevenson, and then Paula Reddick. Again, same kind of concept. We see residual impacts throughout the community based on these programs. We're able to honor people that are making a positive impact in the community. You're going to see Dr. Washington here as part of the award ceremony, and somewhere on the bottom left you see Miss Edwards. Who knows what she's doing at the podium?
You never know.
But the value here is we're able to recognize multiple members of our community for lifetime efforts, not just one-offs, but for multiple efforts. And the last thing we have is Community Development Week. This actually happened a couple weeks ago, but we didn't get to share this with you on the pictures. And so you're going to see this was hosted by Neighborhood Improvement Services. We had a homeowner celebration and an open house. Miss Edwards is standing in front of the open house where we were able to go in and look at the model over on Cox Avenue, 2 houses back to back. In the far side of the screen, you're going to see that house has someone in it. Miss Annette Brock was given a wreath to celebrate her first time home ownership in her life. And so she was so excited. She's around in one of these pictures here. She's right there in the middle, in between Pamela and Tracy, where she was given that wreath. Exciting for us on Cox Avenue to be able to have 2 new houses. Just this week, someone asked about the houses on Ann, and they're like, hey, who's doing those houses over on Ann? And I said, well, of course, that's the city. You know, who else would be doing the houses on Ann? They're like, wow, have you seen what those look like? If you haven't seen, I encourage you, go check them out. This program is excellent. More than 15 homes have been built by the city using this program. This is from our CDBG funds. And so we have this. Back to one of Dr. Washington's questions before, when people ask what's the value of our HUD program dollars, 15 houses, 15 people, 15 families. And so now when the federal government's looking at what are we going to do with those funds, and potentially we may take those funds out, those funds equal at least, at a minimum, 15 families impacted in the city of Jacksonville. Multiply that across the country, and you see the impact that HUD funds have in the United States, and that's just one program. We're not talking about all the other programs that our CDBG funds hit. You can go over to Phillips Park, you can see a program. You can go into a lot of our park areas, and you can see a program that the funds are coming through. So as we wrap up CDB, Community Development Week, you see Mr. Warden here. He actually wasn't there for the event. He showed up for the picture only, but he put the apron on, which was nice and made it look like he's working. This event is an appreciation for all of the city staff and all the community members that help out throughout the year to make community development successful. And so, once again, Tracy's team has expanded this recognition to not only some of our teams, but to include entire city team. Whether it's 621 full-time, 154 part-time, if you work for the city, you can show up and be appreciated that day, because the efforts that we go through are a team effort down and across. Some of the other volunteers here are members of the NESAC group and members of the community And you see multiple partners here handing out lunch, just to say thank you for all the hard work throughout the time. So Mayor, you see, there's always a lot going on in our community, in our city, and it's super cool stuff that people can get excited about, even if you don't have the jamboree, even if you're not building houses, even if you're not thinking about a multi-use facility. There are amazing people in our community, from our youth to lifetime achievement people, that make an impact on our lives every single day. And we're thankful for the opportunity to share that with the council and with people that watch on TV. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to adjourn? So moved. All in favor, signify by saying aye.